Welcome to Madlit Musings, the podcast where we dive into the minds of authors, exploring the profound realms of faith, social issues, and the delightful world of entertainment. I'm your host, Jamie Jo Wright, and on this literary journey, you never quite know what you're going to get. Hey there, Madlit enthusiasts. Our podcast is sponsored by the esteemed Baker Publishing Group. Whether you're into heartwarming romance, gripping suspense, or deep dives into matters of faith and society, Baker Publishing Group has it all. With Revell and Bethany House publishers under their umbrella, they bring you a diverse array of books that will captivate your mind and stir your soul. Check out all of their line at www.bakerbookhouse.com. Hey everyone, it is Jo right here at Madlit Musings, and I'm super excited today, really excited, because I have Robin Jones Gunn with me on the podcast. Hi, Robin.
Hi, Jamie.
I'm excited because I was just telling Robin before we got on that I was the first generation of readers of the Christy series where they would release the book.
Yeah.
And then there wasn't another one written yet. My daughter can get them all right now. I didn't have that luxury.
Yes, and you told me that I wasn't writing fast enough. So
no.
For all of your followers who are writers, just know that's a universal problem. If your readers really like what you're doing, they say faster.
It is.
Oh.
Well, it was great with the Christy Miller series too, because, so I do have to tell a little background, even though we're not here to talk about Miller. There was a little lady in our church who had never married, and she was the church librarian. And she also worked in a Christian bookstore. And she knew I loved to read. So she was the one that started me on Jeanette Oak and the Christian fiction. So every time she'd come to our house, I couldn't wait because Dorothea would bring me a new book. Well, one day she brought me this book, and it was the first book in the Christy Miller series, and it had just come out. And she goes, I thought you might like this because this is actually written for your age, which was also a new thing in Christian fiction at the time. And I opened it up, and no joke, the girl, Christy Miller, was from Wisconsin, which is where I was living.
And you know why
I do.
There's a reason for that, yes.
There's a reason for that. We have a mutual...
Readers don't know that, but you and I do.
Mm-hmm. Yep. We have a mutual fondness for Wisconsin for multiple reasons, but that was so exciting. And then I love to swim, and one of the things I'll never forget is Christy Miller in her string bean green swimsuit. And no joke, every time I went shopping for a swimsuit after that, I was looking for a green one because I wanted the string bean green swimsuit.
Wow.
So... Wow. And I did finally meet my Todd, except when I met my Todd, it was years later, and we didn't like each other for the first 5 years of our life. So
5 years? Oh, my husband and I, it was just 2 years. When we first met, it was like, go away. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And 2 years later, we both changed so much, and it was like, you're so different from me, and that's really good because I need, the iron sharpens iron kind of thing started to happen, and sparks do fly, and
they do.
40-some years later, still do, but wow, what a great partnership. So
that's where we're
another
at
bit of encouragement. Someone who's like, I don't know. Guess what? You may have already met him and you just haven't gotten to the point where you get it.
Yeah. Nathan and I were in youth ministry for over 20 years before we moved on to other things. And we always told the kids when they would start complaining about somebody of the opposite gender that was driving them nuts, and well... maybe you'll grow up someday and be like Nathan and I. And they'd be like, no. But it stops their complaining really fast. They're like, maybe if we don't talk about it, it'll go away. But So this is fun, though. So you have a new book coming out with Revell. Tell us a little bit about it, because it's not Christy Miller. It's a totally different concept. So let's go.
Right. So the title is Tea with Elephants. And it's the first in a series that's called The Suitcase Sisters. So I wrote a series years ago called the Sister Chick series, about two friends that travel all over the world and different characters in each book. And there's 8 books in that series. And I kept getting mail from readers. Again, you don't write fast enough. We want more Sister Chicks. And I realized I had changed a lot since I started writing those books. My daughter's much older now, so I'm watching her generation and how they
Mhm.
are navigating things. And so I just put something up on social media a couple years ago and said, so if I did write another Sister Chicks book, where would you want the characters to go? And I had like 1,200 responses within a day.
Wow.
And they really wanted clearly for the books to be for this, younger generation, so that the main characters in their late 30s, 40s, kind of dealing with
Mhm.
those life issues, but send them off to some interesting place in the world and let them have an adventure and see what their life looks like compared to the rest of the world. So
Yeah.
I knew then that the first one had to be set in Africa, because I've been to Kenya twice, but I had never written a full novel about it. I in
Mhm.
the Katie Weldon series, I sent her to Africa in the
Mhm.
4th Katie Weldon book, Finally and Forever, and she goes off to Kenya. But oh, it was just so fun. I have a really good friend in Nairobi, and she
Mhm.
took me on a safari one time when I went, and she took me to a hotel the second trip. We went up and stayed in this treetop hotel where you look down on the watering hole and the animals come at twilight. And
Okay.
they have this like balcony area where they come with silver tea set service and on china cups serve you tea with elephants. And then that's
Oh my
how I got the
goodness.
title. Yeah.
That's like a dream. That would be amazing.
Yep.
That would
Yep.
be so cool. Oh, I love that. And I love elephants too, because I was
Really.
raised in Circus Town, as you
Hmm.
know.
I do.
And I remember going down to the river. It wasn't quite as glamorous where you have tea on silver and teacups, but we'd go down to the river and the elephants would be loose and they'd be in the
Oh,
river bathing. And it was the closest you can get to a safari in Wisconsin. But
I
it
love
was so fun.
that.
It was great. I loved that as a kid. Elephants are the
Wow.
best.
Are they still there?
This is the first year without the elephants.
Oh.
Yeah, yeah, the circus is kind of dying down, and the elephants that they had were aging, and so they've retired them. And now there's kind of a whole question mark around
Wow.
elephants and circus and treatment and all
Oh,
that. So they're just
yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
separating from that, which is okay. But they had this one elephant. She's been there since I was a kid, and I've ridden her and been slapped by her with her tail and all that fun stuff. So I relate just slightly
Yes,
to the
you were
elephants.
initiated, that's for sure. I love that.
That's awesome. So you have two characters. Have we ever met these 2? Are these 2 from the Sister Chicks or
Nope,
totally new?
nope, nope.
Okay.
Totally new and really a different feel than the Sister Chicks, kind of,
Okay.
because the last series that I had been writing was called the Haven Maker series. There's only 2 books,
Mhm.
Becoming Us and Being Known. And I had hoped
Mhm.
to do a whole series, but the publisher decided that we were done after 2 books. And so what I learned from the reader responses on those books of what they wanted was more stories that would really delve into the life issues of
Mhm.
women in that kind of age group, the
Mhm.
late 30s, and
Yep.
the Becoming Us and Being Known are about Christy Miller, who's now Christy Spencer, Christy and her friend Sierra,
Mhm.
and these new friends that show up in the Haven Maker series. And so those stories, I got to see what are these characters like in this heading toward midlife season
Yeah.
with children and job problems and things. So that's incorporated into Suitcase Sisters. So it's a little bit of Sister Chicks, a little
Yeah.
bit of Haven
I like
Makers,
that.
but brand new characters that, you know, do you feel this way, Jamie? Like, I have to really like my main characters, because especially when I'm writing first person, and this is a little different way of doing things, and then um, two friends. One of
Mhm.
them is telling the story, but the other, you
Okay.
have to really get to know her too. So it's kind of like
Mhm.
double work on the
Yeah.
characters' insights. But don't you
Mhm.
feel like it takes a while till you feel like, okay, I really like this character. I don't care where they go or what they do. I just want to
Mhm.
follow them.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And I found when I'm writing a book and I'm not connecting with the main character, writing the book is like pulling teeth without
Yeah.
Novocaine. It's just painful.
And it feels that you have to really come up with more plot and
Yeah.
device and
Mhm.
things that make it more interesting because the characters themselves aren't really capturing your
Right.
attention. So I'm
Right.
working on the second book in the series now, and
Okay.
I mean, this is how you can tell as a writer, can't you? You
Okay.
wake up and you realize you were just dreaming about that character and what she was
Yes.
doing. We're not
Yes.
crazy. It's just
No.
that's the
No.
imagination is alive and it
Uh-huh.
it
Uh-huh.
connects.
I've gone to
Yeah.
sleep and I've kind of been in that between sleep and wake mode, and then I realize I'm praying for my character.
Yes.
I'm like, "Oh," I go through the list of people that need prayer, and then I remember this person who has got this awful thing, and I'm like, "Wait, she's we'll set her aside. She's not real. It's
Yeah.
okay. Lord, you don't have to waste your time on her. Maybe me at this point."
It's all true. It's all
It
true. I'm
is.
right there with you. So
Yeah.
anyways, that's
Yeah.
the long answer to your question, but
Oh, it's
it's
great.
really a combination and it's something new, and I love doing
Mhm.
something new because there's just a
Yeah.
freshness that comes with it.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So we
Mm.
have women that are barreling down toward midlife, which is pretty much where I'm at. I might be on the tail end of that. We won't say for sure. Definitely 30s in the rearview mirror. I will say that.
Yeah.
But what kind of issues, topics did you find yourself, especially with this new one coming out, really diving into that women can expect to read about?
Yeah, with the very first book, I don't want to give a lot of it away, but the main character
Yeah.
who's telling the story has
Okay.
at the very beginning a jolt of a big life change. And it's like she's not quite sure who she is anymore. Like that's
Mm,
what I spent all my years focusing on to be about that and to do that. And now that's just changed and I don't really know where I am. So that was fun to see her kind of come
mhm.
into the what's next because we've all had to do that where you have to let the old dream die so that
Yeah.
the new dream can have space to grow. But
Right.
because the seasons, the ground is going to be frosted over for a while, or, nothing's going to be sprouting up until that
Right.
new season starts. So
Hmm.
with the um, the other character in the first book, um, I think I can tell her issue without giving it away.
Okay.
But I've heard this in so many young women. The second character, she and her husband married quite young, and here they are, 38, and she's asking herself, did I make a really big mistake? Like
Hmm.
I didn't we got married, we started having babies, got a house. Like I'm not even 40 and I've hit all these supposed life milestones and I lost myself along the way. So
Yeah.
that's really fun for her too, because I think taking him to Africa and putting him in this place of everything sort of uncertain, it allowed their foundations to get shifted. And,
Yeah.
yeah, that's just
Yeah.
kinda how real life is, isn't it?
It is. It is. I'm relating to some of these things already. You're talking about them, and I'm like, not that I think my marriage was a mistake, but you do kind of you go through all these
Oh,
seasons, and then
yes.
all of a sudden your kids are getting older. Like my kids are just in their early teens, and they're developing their own lives, and I'm sitting here going, Who am I? What?"
Yeah.
And then I realize, I go through the stop telling me what to do, honey. Like, and he's not, but you kind of get this little independent, rebellious streak at 40 something years old where you're like, wait a second, I want to be me.
Yeah, and, like, I'm not
It's
sure who that
weird.
is right now. Yeah, and
Yeah,
that's what
yeah.
I really want to have the readers feel, because it
Mm-hmm.
is a real visceral kind of experience when
It
you're in
is.
that, especially
Yeah.
with teenagers. I mean, it's like premenopause meets preteens. Like that's
That's an explosion waiting to
explosive.
happen.
Yes, it is. It
Let's just
is.
be honest.
It
Yes.
is. Don't
Yeah.
know how to best say that, but it's just so that to just go into these stories and be
Mhm.
able to focus on these characters who are out of their normal situation,
Right.
and there they are and experiencing another part of the world and
Right.
saying, "Okay, this was what is happening. I can see it more clearly now, and this is what needs to change."
Mhm.
And it's a good change, and I'm
Yeah.
happy with that. So to
Yeah.
that's the kind of story I love to tell, to kind of take the characters on that journey, so the reader closes the book and says, "Thank you, that helped.
Mm.
I see. I see
Mhm.
what's next." And it's through a story. That's why we write fiction,
Right.
Jamie.
I
That's
know. I know. Right? Right.
yeah.
Well, it's kind of funny too because I was talking to a couple friends of mine and they're like, I probably should read more nonfiction, et cetera, et cetera. And I said, I think there's definitely a place for nonfiction in our lives, and it's a really important place. But I said,
Mhm.
don't discount what the Lord can teach you through quality, biblically based fiction,
Oh, yeah.
because sometimes we learn better through story and we learn better through an imaginary experience. And all of a sudden it hits you, and you're like, oh, yeah, yeah, I
I mean,
needed that.
apparently that's true because let's see, God wrote a book and he put a lot of stories in there. And
Right.
Jesus came and he told a lot of parables, and
Right.
somehow that's how we learn through
I know.
generations, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's why I think it's
It is.
really an honor to be able to do what we do,
Yeah.
because not everybody can tell stories and not
Mhm.
everybody can have that wisdom that God gives us to see this is a truth, and I can kind of smuggle it into this
Mhm.
tale, and the reader will they won't the
Yeah.
reader wouldn't hear it if a friend came to them and said, "You should do this," or "You having
Right.
problems," you know.
Right.
Nope. But it's like, oh, the mirror. The book
Mhm.
becomes the mirror.
Oh, that's a really great way of saying it. You're right.
Yeah.
It does. It becomes this reflection back at you, and you're like, "Oh, I can apply that." And somehow it's easier to recognize your own either insecurities or your own errors when it's a fictional person telling you, like, you don't get as defensive.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, if my husband tells me, "Here's your problem," I'm like, "Well, that's not your right to tell me." But if Christy Miller says, "Here's your problem," like, "Oh, Christy, you're so wise."
It's true. It's true.
Oh, I love it. So, Tea with Elephants, and it takes place in Kenya.
Mhm.
Can I ask, is it a spoiler if I ask how the two characters end up going to Kenya? Because that's not typically
No,
on your.
they are given a safari from one of the I'm not saying their names because
Mhm.
there's actually something in the very beginning of the book when
Okay.
they first meet that is a play. It kind of connects to their names, so I don't know,
Okay.
but it's on the back cover, so
It's
whatever.
okay.
But they, um, the secondary character, her father-in-law, who travels a lot with his wife, gives her this tour package of a safari
Okay.
because her mother-in-law is just particular about where she goes and prefers cruises and sitting by the pool reading a book. And so she decides, I don't want to go be about wild animals and about, you know, things that are so
Yeah.
unfamiliar. And
Yeah.
so it's like use it or lose it. And so this secondary character's husband says, I really think you should go with this friend. They've been friends since they were in high school, and they
Okay.
always had these dreams,
Hmm.
faraway places,
Hmm.
and it just life didn't go that way. So here's their
Yeah.
chance. And it's
Yeah.
a gift in
Yeah.
many ways. Yeah.
In many ways. Yeah. Oh, and what a time of reflection, too, to have two friends go off and you're on something like that. And there's so much time to think and reflect and realize
Yeah.
how life is changing and moving and time is ticking, and yeah, you're trying to find your space and your balance. So sounds exciting. I'm
Yep.
excited. I'm
Thank
excited. I think
you.
this is gonna be great, and I love the elephant angle, as I said before. That's like an
You have
instant
a
sell right
personal
there.
connection, yes.
Oh, but elephants are there, there's something that, and I don't know if you planned this. I really don't, and maybe you did. But there's such a parallel with a female elephant and a woman going through their life. Because if you
Mm,
learn about elephants, and I studied elephants quite a bit because I wrote an elephant into one of my circus novels, but um, the way they nurture and
mm,
the way they bond together as women to not only raise their own calf, but to raise the herd of calf. And if one female elephant gets out of line, there's either the risk of that it's kind of like, here's your opportunity to get back in the circle, or you're out. And there's
yep,
almost like this drama within female elephants and their bands in the same way that there is in human female relationships. And then because elephants have such a long lifespan, they actually go through the different levels of young mother,
mm,
middle-aged mother, to now they're the matriarch of the herd with no calves, but they're the ones that are viewed with the wisdom. And I've always loved the parallel of elephants to a woman and her journey as a mother, as a caregiver, and as a nurturer to the people around them. And so I just thought that was so cool when you came out with the story. I was like, oh, it's like the perfect animal to kick off a story with two women going on a personal journey. Maybe I read way too much into that. Robin's like,
Oh, I
wow,
love
Jamie.
it. No, I love it. I love it, and you have such a beautiful way of expressing that because there's touches of that in the book, but I wished I'd had your words to add to it to kind of embellish it a little bit more because the thing that's truly amazing is they have the largest brain and
Mhm.
they really do remember,
They
and
do.
they have no predators unless maybe a lion is absolutely starving. But
Right.
there's when I went on safari and we got to drive the Jeep up so close to these wild elephants and just the majesty.
Yeah.
They're a different kind of feel around them than around the zebras or around, it's
Mhm.
just kind of a reverence
Yeah, that's a
um,
good way of saying it. A reverence.
to their ability, their wisdom,
Yeah.
their place in God's creation. So yeah, yeah.
I love it. I love it. I love it. So, as you can tell, I'm kind of an elephant lover. So, I was kind of excited about this just because of the tea with elephants part.
I love okay, so here's what's really funny, Jeannie. Like, I I don't like animals, but
Yes.
but I use that because when I went on the safari, I was smitten. I mean,
Mm,
it was amazing. And so I have these 2 friends who their idea of, "Hey, well, let's go into all these adventurous places in the world like Italy," or, but they go to Africa and they're like, "I don't like animals, you know, but it's a chance to go somewhere," kind of thing.
so
But
funny.
then how
Ah,
everything's
yeah.
changed by the end of the
Hmm.
book and that understanding of again, it's just when you see creation in its
Yeah.
natural
Yeah.
habitat, you're so small. You're just so
Hmm. Hmm.
humbled
Yeah.
out.
You are. And it brings such an element of honor to, if you can view it through the eyes of creation and the
Mhm.
Lord, the God being the creator, it brings such an awe-inspiring sense of
Yeah.
awareness to the intricacy of creation. Like, I think about writing a book and how much time and effort goes into creating a character,
Mhm.
creating a plot, etc. And then you get done with it and you're like, well, that could have been better, you know? And you look at God and he's done that with creation. And instead of going, well, that could have been better, he was like, and it was good. It was like
That's it.
exactly what
That's
it
it.
was supposed to be. And then
Yeah.
you look at that within nature and it's such uh, a cinematic version of who God is, just to
Yep.
watch them.
I agree 100%, and that's exactly
Yeah.
well, I had this just exactly along that line. I had this moment where I was reading in Genesis and, and it was good, evening, morning,
Mhm.
first day. And I realized when God created and he called it good, then he rested. And I realized looking at all the books on the shelf that I've written, and there's some that I just to your point at the beginning of what you were saying, if you're like, well, that could have been better. And
Mhm.
I I had this moment, Jamie. I just got up and went across the room and I just touched the spine of every book and
Mhm.
I just blessed it and
Oh,
said,
yeah.
"This is good." And it every different
Yeah.
season of life you're going through when you're writing, there's
Mhm.
some that are like a little more vivid than whatever,
Right.
fill
Yeah.
in your adjective, but that it and I got to one book where it was almost like a little electric spark, like
Mm.
that I had so many problems, I had to do so many rewrites, and it was just
Mm.
time to make peace with that book.
Yeah.
It's done, and
Yeah.
it's good, and just to go on and create whatever's next.
Mhm.
I love that you said that, I love that you feel that way too.
Well, it is, and oh yeah, I totally feel that way. And it's, one of those things like I've kind of stepped back even from my own writing of books and been like, if I can go into it with an attitude of to God be the glory. This well, I'm not intending to rhyme, but it's going to rhyme. To God be the glory, but this isn't my story,
Hmm.
right? This is his. Then even if I feel it's not where I wanted it to be at the very, very end, or I'm kind of like, oh, it could have been better. Um, you can't discount how the Lord is going to use it. Like the book that I just had come out, I sent it to my editor and I said, I'm really glad I have two more books in my contract because otherwise this is my career ending novel right here. And she's like, "No, it's not." And I'm like, "Yes, it is." Right? And even now, like, it comes out and you're just kinda like, "Oh, yay, it's here." But then you get an email from somebody who's
Yep.
read something, and I got an email from a mother who was going through a situation with her child, and my book deals a lot with, a character who's agoraphobic, like, she's just very anxiety driven,
Mhm.
very doesn't wanna be with people, and she runs a bed and breakfast, like, it's the worst scenario. Um, and the mother was like, I picked up this book ages ago on pre-order, and I just picked it up to read it as an escape from where I was at, and then I
Mm,
came through, and the Lord was showing me ways to help minister to my child who's going through this, and I hadn't expected it. And I was like,
so good.
and there you have it. It's like the Lord going,
Yeah.
"And mic drop, Jamie, mic drop. It's my mic to drop, not
That's
yours."
that's yes, absolutely. And those letters too that come and are such a surprise when they say, "You know that part in the book where you wrote this and this and this? I know what you meant was this and this, and that's what I'm going through, and that's what I needed to hear." And you think, "I don't remember that part that I wrote. I don't
Right,
think that's what I was ever thinking when I wrote
right.
that." But how alive, like
Yeah,
words just can
yeah,
be like little seeds that get in there.
exactly.
That's
And then
so
the Lord
good.
connects that back to his word, which is the perfect word, and then
Yes.
everything's redeemed.
Yes.
It's just so
Yes.
great. So great.
It is.
Oh, well, I could sit here and talk forever,
I know.
but,
I love it. I love it.
it's so much
Well,
fun,
and
but
you and I met quite a few how many years ago? 5 or 6 years
mm,
ago at a
at
writers'
least.
conference
Yeah, yeah.
in
I'm trying to remember.
Indiana? Where
I think
Illinois?
it was
Where
Indiana. I think it was Indiana. You were
Indiana?
keynoting. You were keynoting. I think it was Indianapolis.
Yeah. Yeah, but
Anyway,
I know, but that's the
yeah.
only time we've been in the same space, and we didn't really have much of a conversation then.
Oh,
So
oh,
I'm grateful for this.
it's fun to have conversations with you and, a little bit of the childhood hero right here, looking at you going, "I'm talking to Robin." But
Uh,
it's I love to see, even in my own story, I look at how the Lord links people through story.
mhm.
And, there I was I think I was 15 or 16 when the first Christie book came out. And reading that book that Dorothea, this little old lady, gave to me, and how I waited and I would ask her at church, like, when's the next one coming? Well, I'm not sure because this was pre-internet, right?
Oh,
You
yeah.
know, this was the day where you didn't have to do anything, Robin, for marketing online, you know. And she'd be like, I don't know, I'll just keep watching the magazines that the publisher puts out and I'll let you know. And then
Yeah.
sure enough, I have something for you. And it was always in a little plastic, not plastic paper, brown paper
Mm.
sleeve from the bookstore. And she'd hand it to me. And she hands me one before Sunday school. And of course, I didn't listen to Sunday school because I'm like sneak reading. you know. But, I look at those times and I'm thinking, if I had looked back and said to that 15-year-old girl, "Someday, you and Robin are gonna sit and chat about elephants and creation," I would have been like, "Yeah, whatever." But I love how the Lord just brings it full circle, and
Yeah.
all of a sudden it's like, it's story, it's relationships, and it's really all for his honor and glory, and that's the best part right there.
It is the best part, and when I was writing the first Christy Miller book and it kept getting turned down by publisher after
Mhm,
publisher after publisher, and it took 2 years before there was a publisher interested in it, and during that time, I was like, "I don't know, should I give up?" I'm reading it chapter
mhm,
by chapter every week to the girls in the church youth group because my husband was a youth pastor too,
mhm. Yep,
and then I found this verse, Psalm 102:18, I think. I'm really bad with numbers, but it says,
me too.
"Let this be written for a future generation,
Mm.
that a people not yet created may praise the Lord." And I wrote it on a little card. Oh wow. And I put it in the window but above the kitchen sink.
Mhm,
And I just thought, okay, what if I prayed just really big? Like, what if this book is finally published and it
mhm.
and it has an effect on readers that haven't even been born yet? And and here we are,
Yeah,
Jamie, like you are the answer to that prayer. Lord, please let you were born already, but
I was, yeah.
here's your
Yeah,
daughter in that season of life.
yeah,
And the ways that God chooses to lead us when we just
yeah,
surrender it all to him, but
yeah.
then just kind of catch that vision like, oh no, this is so much bigger than me, so much
Mhm,
bigger than what this little project is.
mhm,
God is asking me to join him in his work and do
mhm.
something. And so I'm just going to pray for it to really be, well,
Yeah,
then let it roll out and really
right,
work. And that
right.
first book and then the
Yeah,
next and the next
yeah,
and I haven't stopped writing since.
yeah. It's so neat, and I'm such a huge, because my books go back and forth in time. I'm
Hmm.
such a huge lover of legacy, and I've
Yes.
I've had kind of this thing I've been doing. My mom passed away 3 years ago, and my
Hmm.
grandma passed away, and just some really important women in my life have moved to heaven, and I look at legacy and what they passed on, but then I've been doing like the ancestry.com thing and going
Ah,
back. And when you start to do that, you start learning about people that are 4 or 5 generations before you. And you realize that I wouldn't be the person that I am today if my 5 times great grandmother hadn't settled, true story, in a community in the eastern coast of the United States that was solely meant to foster an early church atmosphere where they could stay strong in their faith. And
wow.
because of that legacy, however extreme it sounds in my mind now for current day, like what?
Yeah.
But that legacy was passed on to generation to generation to generation. And then I was adopted. So I was adopted into this family. And you
Wow.
look at how God touches people through generations, whether it's stories, books, we all leave a legacy
Mm,
that echoes into eternity for miles. And I don't think we realize that sometimes, how much what we do
yeah.
today will still be here when we're gone. And my mom's impact on my daughter's life, and how I look at my daughter and she'll say things. I'm like, wow, that's like a direct quote from mom,
Mhm.
and things like that. And so, what, just to piggyback on what you're saying, is that future generation is so important, and
Yeah.
we touch it with our
That's
words.
so good and so true and something we don't think about because 'cause we're so focused on the right here, the right now,
Right,
as if we had the
right.
most original creative idea that ever came to a
Hmm.
human, and yet
Hmm.
it's so much woven into
Right.
our tapestry of our DNA and all. I
It
had the
is.
most interesting, email from what message from a
Mhm.
woman. So I do a podcast called
Yeah.
Women Worth Knowing.
Oh,
And
good.
the woman who started it, Cheryl Broderson, her father was Chuck Smith, who started the Calvary Chapel in Costa Mesa way back. And I
Mhm.
lived in Orange County at that time and went to
Okay.
Calvary Chapel. But Cheryl and I had never met. And then
Wow.
we lived on Maui for 10 years and then we
Mhm.
moved here a couple years ago, and someone introduced me to Cheryl, and we just hit it off because we love stories. We love telling stories
Mhm.
about women. So Cheryl
Mhm.
has started this
Mhm.
podcast, Women Worth Knowing. and just telling about women in history. So every Thursday we go in studio, we record these podcasts. We've got a couple hundred, and you just never really know who's listening or whatever. But
Right.
I had put a little thing up on social media saying, this is a really good episode. Go listen to this one. And someone messaged me and said, my grandfather's great uncle adopted this woman. I mean, it's a complex story, but
Sure.
and I was just amazed because that connection. And then she said that her grandfather had told her the whole story that we did on the podcast. The woman's name is Svea Flood. And so she had learned about Svea and Svea's daughter, Aggie. And Aggie was the girl that was adopted. So point is that the young woman who wrote this to me and said, I can't believe, you did a podcast on her. Like, here's my connection.
Wow.
And then she sent me another note just this morning. And she said, when my grandmother, who was kind of in the lockdown season of 2020, she asked me for some books to read. And so I started giving her the Christy Miller series one by one. And she got all the way through the Katie Weldon series. It's like, just what you're saying, that full circle, like, I want to do this podcast and tell this story about this amazing woman whose life had an impact on mine. But oh, wait, her relative down the line, and then is connecting her grandmother to these stories. Is that odd or is that God?
That's a great T-shirt slogan right there. Is that odd or is that God? Somebody make that T-shirt.
It's just like you're saying, we're so amazing. Connected, and to like receive that as the gift that it is. That's the thing.
Yeah. Oh, all right. Well,
all right.
I guess we have to say goodbye.
I know. To be continued next time. To be continued. Our lives
Well, you've got more books coming out, so we'll just have to have a sequel to this conversation with the next book. So,
thanks,
but for
Jamie.
those of you listening, get tea for elephants, right? Or tea with elephants.
Tea with elephants.
With elephants, yes. The elephants don't drink the tea. It's not tea for elephants. It's tea with elephants. But you definitely want to get that book from Robin. And Robin, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you for joining Madlit Musings, where every conversation is a journey and every book is a new adventure. Subscribe now on your favorite podcast player or check us out on YouTube, and let's explore the fascinating intersection of faith, society, and storytelling together.